Hi everyone. I think it's already noon, so I can see a lot of sleepy faces. So I'll try keeping this short. And there's a lot of information, but I'll try making it a little bit interactive and give you a few points in my life which have helped me think of ideas. And I mean, this was the whole concept of today's TEDx, which was ideas and innovation. So the whole topic that I've thought about is how, why, when should you build ideas? All right. Now, a quick thing about myself. I'm someone who ideates a lot. What I mean by this, every time I come across a problem statement, I straight away put it down on my own personal Notion doc. Notion is this note-taking app. So at this point, I have around 120 ideas. Obviously, I'm working on only one right now. Now, these 120 ideas have been a culmination of 5 to 6 years. I've worked with around 15 to 16 different individuals across 8 to 10 geographies. And these ideas have ranged from something wild to something very simple, such as starting a burger company as well. So it's been across the board, and I've had a ball of a time doing it. And I'm going to talk about like how at least have I gone about ideating, because that's something which is very important in, that's something which is very important for all the students here. Because everyone's starting so early. I mean, you have 19-year-olds starting billion-dollar companies. Okay. Firstly, I think it's very important to know why should you start up? Why is it important? Some people want to earn money. You want to buy a flashy car. You want to make your parents proud. You want to buy them a house. And that's completely fine. You want to do something for money? Do it. But be committed to it. Second, it's cool, obviously. It's in news all day. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of talk of unicorns being born. There's a lot of startups dying. There's a lot of kids starting things super early. Stanford is giving grants to people who are 17 and 18 to start things off. It's cool, I get it. But, I mean, make up your mind if this is something which is right for you. And the third thing, you know for a fact that you're smart. You know you're smart. You know you're better than others. You know you have an edge. And you're capable of doing things much more. And I mean, it's on you to figure out what works best for you to actually make up your mind on starting up. All right, before you even, now, first of all, you've thought that, you know what, I think it's cool, I need to do this. Ask yourself, is this the right time? Are you ready for the journey? It's very grueling. I can tell you one thing, like starting up means you have 10 minutes of happiness in a week. The remaining time is just getting beaten down. And that 10 minutes of happiness is also very, very short-lived. So it's not a lot of happiness, but at the same time, I mean, the end reward should be good, and you need to be in it for the long run. So ask yourself if you're ready for the journey. Second, see if you have the right infra. One, do you have any liabilities? Do you have the right set of people around you? Do you also have all the capabilities? You don't have that much of a knowledge gap to start something. And third, are you sure about hiring the right team? If you can't hire the right team, are you yourself the team? There are one-person companies as well. That's why. So you have to ask yourself these questions before even getting into things. One second. Yeah. All right, you figured this part out. And now I think it's time to ideate. Now, obviously, ideas can fall into your lap. Newton had the apple falling on his head and discovered gravity. But it's not that easy now because I think everything is already up in the internet and everyone knows what's up. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to ideate and how to go about this. Yeah. So how do we think of an idea? One, you spot a trend based on something which is already existing and is going well. And you figure out something around that itself. Second, you solve a pain point that you have been facing. Third, you copy something else, but you do it better. And fourth is you build something which you have a lot of experience in and you know you're going to be good at. So I'm going to deep dive into a few of these and talk about my experience through each and every one of these. Yeah. Now, the first one is spotting a trend and building on that. So I'm going to talk about my experience and how I went about that. So I'm a big footballer. I play a lot of football. I've gone to the World Cup. I've done everything when it comes to football. I buy the best boots. I still play. I play like 2 to 3 games per week. And back in 2013, football was booming a lot in India. We didn't have a lot of fields to play on. I would end up playing in skating rinks. And the second thing, whenever I went to Bombay or Pune, saw a lot of people playing in these futsal courts. So I thought, you know what? Let me come back to Delhi and start building futsal courts. Obviously, at that time it was a good idea, but I ran into a problem, which was capital. I didn't have access to capital. I couldn't get a lot of money to start things off. And eventually I said, you know what? I don't think now is the right time. I should probably shelve this. In retrospect, none of these things were wrong decision. It's just a learning. Now let's get to the second one, solving a pain point. Now in my startup journey, I had this point where I was just thinking of problem statements, a lot of problem statements. The one problem statement that really stuck to me and I really hated it was running into paywalls. What that means is when you're reading newsletters and you suddenly run into something where it says, please pay 10 rupees, please pay 100 rupees, please pay 1,000 rupees to read this article, I'm pretty sure that irritates everyone. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to solve this. So I built out my own solution. Basically, I thought of building a UPI-based network just for publishers so people could transact, micro-transact and pay for articles, pay per view of article. So the solution was very interesting. I mean, it got a lot of interest. We spoke to the biggest publishers in the world, like from New York Times, Washington Post, all the people in India as well. But we ran into a huge problem, which was just that publishers would never agree to this solution. In non-technical terms, basically you as users end up paying for a subscription for 12 months out. They like that. They don't care about the fact that you should come forward and pay 100 rupees. They care more about the 1,200 rupees which comes up front. So before I could even start, I realized that this is not going to be a long-term solution and again, shelved the idea. Interesting part is this idea, I ended up working with 6 to 7 different people across 3-4 geographies. Someone from Stanford, someone from Canada, someone from New York, someone from Bangalore. It was insane. Now next thing, copying something and doing it better. I've given a quick example here, obviously, which is a well-known one. Dunzo started, didn't really pick up way too much. Zepto came in and swept the board. Something from my side, I, again, being a very fitness freak, I've seen and used a lot of apps in India. Apps like Healthify Me, there's quite a few. I think a lot of people use fitness apps here for training purposes, etc. And I'm also a fan of a lot of global fitness products from, now there's Indian ones also. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to build a more advanced version of this. So I got into thinking, I'm going to build a much more advanced version of Healthify Me and make it for the more elite bunch of people to train better, train harder, and just get fitter. I again ran into a problem, which was this is the market size which I see for this is not way too much, and I'm with my ambition growing every single day, I saw that, you know what, this is not going to be that big, so let me take a pause on this again. Which brings me to the last one, which is build something that you have a very deep idea on and you have a great understanding about it. Now, obviously, I've given a very quick example here, but I'm going to talk about myself. I'm someone who's been very interested in everything consumer-based for the last 25 to 28 years. Why do I say 28 years? My father got me into football at a very young age. I started looking at David Beckham's football boots. Ever since I was 6 years old, I was like, I need these boots. They look so good. From that point on, I started getting into all sorts of branding elements. I got into Pokemon cards. Then later on, when watermelon juice flavored Fanta was launched, I wanted that. Grape flavored Mirinda was launched, I wanted that. I would go into a store, I would actually nick money out of my parents' locker, like few coins, just so I could try these new brands in these stores. So I was always enthralled by everything consumer. And I also, for the last 5 years before starting up, actually worked in the consumer space a lot. Being a part of a VC, I ended up looking at a lot of consumer startups. At the same time, right after that, I worked in leadership positions in 2 more consumer startups, which gave me access to a lot of how to do ops. So at this point, I realized, you know what, all these things are cool. Everything about these problem statements, doing something which is very cutting edge is cool. But what I am interested in and what I know I'm good at is the consumer space. And that's when I started Creo, as you can see, which is it's a gaming focused consumer tech startup. And how I got to that, I'll tell you very quickly as well. So how do we evaluate each of these? I mean, once you've gone through this, it's also important to know that, are you at the right time to do this? So even though I'd gone through all these phases, I knew I should do something in the consumer space. There was actually a point where I went through the entire process of actually building out a consumer startup. And I dropped out like maybe 2 weeks before launch. Why did I drop out? I honestly thought I wasn't a good fit at that time. I would have fired myself after coming in. That company, by the way, is already valued upwards of 300 million. So they've gone on to become very big. Again, in hindsight, it's completely fine. I mean, we learn through all this. So you have to ask yourself as well, and that's what I asked myself at that time. Is this the right time to do this? And I just basically saw that, you know what, my skill sets are very low. What I learned in consulting and VC was very superficial. So I just got back to, and I was also getting married at that time. So my wife and my in-laws and my parents were like, no, this doesn't sound right. You should probably not do this at the time. So yeah, once you realize that the time is now and you can actually do this in that moment, that is when you should take the call. And for me, that came when, in the last 2 years, after knowing that, I'm good at this space and let me get into this, it also came at a point where I knew I could hire the right team. I knew I had access to capital. I could get capital very quickly. I knew the right steps to connecting with the right vendor partners. I knew how to assess our users. I knew what product to get into. I knew our suppliers. So I knew it was the right time. And at the same time, I also had worked with a bunch of very accomplished CEOs. I saw their decision-making process, and I also realized that I'm also able to and I would see how it play out. And a lot of times, whatever I thought of ended up being somewhat correct. So a bunch of these things I evaluated before knowing that it's the right time. And that is when at least I think it came to me that, I think now's the right time, let's do this. Yeah. Lastly, I think it's very important to know that, again, before you get into any of this, knowing that it's, again, like really, really grueling, and knowing that you and the product that you're getting into are a very good fit, what that means is you should have interest area in that space, knowing that you can do it for the next 10 years. For a fact that you can actually, like I said before, hire the right team. You can wake up every day, get them to do things. Now, all of these things need to be put in place before you even think of executing your ideas. And on that note, for everyone over here, before you get into things, you have to know for a fact that this is the right time and place, and figure out your own playbook to start ideating. Thank you.